If you're just joining us, please let us know in the chat where you're joining from. That will also give us a clue that you can hear us okay.
Just like the normal meetings, we'll start a few minutes late to let those people find parking spaces outside.
Exactly. I'm parked in the kitchen.
Oh, I've got a couple cousins on. Hi, Yedlichkas and extended Yedlichka family. Hi, Jean. I'm so glad you made it. Oh, hi, Mama Costello. Lots of
Like paleoanalysis from Rusk, Texas. Agreed. Get those like buttons going.
Hey, Steve, Nancy, from Texas.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
And if you haven't yet, you definitely want to subscribe to the Tampa Bay Fossil Club YouTube channel.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a lot more content coming on here soon. And maybe more meetings.
Let's hope not.
I want more in-person meetings again for sure.
I want to come to one of those as well.
We're going to have you, I promise.
Maybe I can even bring actual fossils, because hands-on is always more fun than just virtual.
They would be excited by that. A lot of the scientists don't bring anything with them. A lot of their jobs don't allow them to, take stuff around. So.
Hi, Pat. Thanks for joining. Where are you joining us from today?
Growing. We'll just wait a couple minutes, let everybody get logged on. Make sure you get your door prize tickets when you walk in the door. Don't forget to purchase some raffle tickets to support the club. Check out our paleo store in the back. And don't forget our t-shirt selection. Last year's models are going for $5.
I'm not sure if they commented in the chat, but my cousins from Arizona are watching. So hi guys, especially Hunter, Johnny, and Melina.
Gregory is asking if this recording will be available on YouTube. Yes, after the live stream and meeting concludes, the video will remain on our YouTube channel for all to see. So if anybody misses it, you'll be able to send them the link and they'll be able to watch what you got to watch.
I agree, David. I want in on the door prize too.
I thought about doing that somehow with call-ins or something, but I didn't want to make this too cumbersome.
Understandable. Hi, Auntie Lane. Thank you for joining. I also just got a message on my phone that unless people are signed into YouTube, they can't comment. So that could be, there could be more people watching that we're not aware of that they can't comment because they're not logged in. So hello to all of you that are there and can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, they should be able to still view it, but they might not be able to say something to us unless they log in with their Google account.
And seeing is what's on the YouTube, right? That's the live feed in your hand?
Yes.
Okay. How does the live feed, does the live feed just change by who's talking, or are you controlling that?
No, right now it's just whoever is talking, it just switches to that view.
Okay.
And I mean, once Ashley starts sharing her screen, everybody will be seeing her screen. And then I think our faces will be on the side.
We're still going up. We typically get about 75 to 100 people in our meetings at the university. So hopefully we'll get up to that level. Oh, but is the count we're showing isn't showing people who aren't logged in, correct?
I think it's showing all people that are viewing, whether they're logged in or not. It's just the
Okay.
people that aren't logged into YouTube won't be able to comment.
Okay.
Thanks to one of my aunts, I think my parents are watching. So hi, Mom and Dad.
Well, we are almost 10 minutes after, so I think I will go ahead and officially start. Welcome everyone to our first shot or try at a virtual meeting. Right out of the gate, I want to thank Eileen Durkin, who you can probably see on your screen, for setting this up. She put a lot of work into it behind the scenes, and Ashley as well, Dr. Ashley. We had to meet on here a few days ago to make sure everything worked, and if Ashley knows what she's doing, you guys will get to watch this tonight. So I think she is. So welcome everyone. I want to talk a little bit about the cancellations first. As you guys know, not a good decision, but it wasn't a hard decision. USF has closed their campus, so we're not meeting at USF until they open for the fall. Of course, today is our last meeting of our season. We split for summer. The university hasn't given me any indication if they will continue virtual learning in the fall or not yet. You guys will know about as much about that as I will. Fossil Fest, I can tell you that was a big kick in the teeth. We needed about, if the virus could have held off about 48 hours, we'd have got Fossil Fest in. We were that close. It was canceled on Friday morning before the weekend of the show. We lost a lot of work. Some of the things we've spent money on can be boxed up, as I put in my article, can be boxed up and saved for Fossil Fest. We have it probably now till March of next year now. But a lot of the work that Cena did, Barbara did, a lot of other people did, it's just lost work. So we did, it was a bad kick in the teeth, and we really wish we could have pulled it off. We tried as hard as we could right up to the last minute, and we were one of the last big events in Tampa that canceled, but we just had to do that. One thing that we'd really like your help with is if you can, you've seen our t-shirts for the Fossil Fest show in the newsletter, you've seen them online. We'd appreciate if you folks could try to purchase some of those shirts, because they will date out. We put dates on those shirts every year, so they are dated 2020, and we're sad that we couldn't put those out for the show, because Barbara Fight, it's honoring Barbara Fight and the saber cat she found, and we wish she was certainly looking forward to everybody walking around with her saber cat on her back that they named after her. But those shirts will be available for $15 a piece. That includes shipping and tax. You can, the information is in the newsletter. I'll put it on Facebook. Please send a check or money order made out to Tampa Bay Fossil Club. Don't send us cash. Don't send me your credit card number on email or anywhere else. If you want to buy something with your credit card, you can email us at tampabayfossilclub.com. Tampa Bay Fossil Club at MSN, and Cena will call you and get your credit card number or send you the information, however that works out. But we don't email us your credit card number. I'll tell you, we were prepared for this. I don't want to say we're rolling in the dough, but we, myself and Leslie and Bill Fosher, have been preparing for something like this to happen for a while. We knew at some point we would lose something that would cost us money. And we use the term, we're not broke, but we don't have no money. But we are doing very well in our finances, and we will get through this with no problem. Field trips, of course, they're all canceled. They started canceling out right away. Fred and Marlon will do their best to get things scheduled as soon as the mines allow us back in. The field trips for the Peace River, although the river is arguably open, Tampa Bay Fossil Club is not going to run any field trips through there for liability reasons, so they won't be official trips. I can tell you've probably already seen online on our Facebook page the TBFC Rebel Alliance, who are at the river today with about 10 or 15 people. As long as they socially distance properly, I don't think you're going to have any trouble getting out of the rivers in your boats and canoes and such. But keep watching the Facebook page and our newsletter for updates on that. Paleo store is closed, of course. I think if you need something or would like something, if you contact Leslie through Facebook, I'm sure Leslie can work out getting you what you need if you've been looking for one of our books that we carry, or if you just want to maybe buy a random pack she put together just to help us out, we'd certainly appreciate it. Keep your membership up to date while we go through this. Remember, there won't be any newsletters for the next 3 months as we go into our summer hiatus. So that's about all the fanfare I have to open this up with. I do want to thank Eileen and Dr. Ashley Ledger again for helping get this started the first time. You know, next time we do it, we have to in the fall, we'll kind of know what we're doing a little bit. And so I appreciate you guys for helping us with that. I met Dr. Ashley at the Mammoth Site in South Dakota. I really don't know how many years ago, but it's been a while. We've seen her there in a couple summers. We didn't realize she was just working for the summer as an intern. We thought she was just one of the local girls or kids working there at the Mammoth Site. And whenever she was gone, we noticed, because she was one of the friendliest people by far to run into in the gift shop there or in the tours. And I don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings, but she had to clearly be one of Dr. Agenbroad's favorite students there. And he made that clear whenever he seen us. And his words were bubbly, I think. She's the bubbliest person he's ever met. And he told us she went off to, I believe, the School of Mines in South Dakota to get her PhD. So we were excited to hear that. We never seen her again for 3, 4, 5 years or more. And one morning we just got up and we're watching CBS Sunday Morning, and we were excited to see it because we knew there was going to be a show about the fossils they were digging out on the in the subway lines there near the La Brea tar pits. And Cena, I think, it said, you need to look up and see who's on the screen. And I looked up, and I'll be darned, there's Dr. Ashley giving the national broadcast representing the company in the city of Los Angeles for their major fossil dig that was going on. So you came a long way, and it's I'm glad to know you, and I'm very surprised. I just couldn't believe it when I saw you on the television that day. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and Eileen will work her magic. And I didn't tell who you worked for though, but you'll probably do that for a paleo field director at Cogstone. Almost sounds like a Flintstone company, Cogstone. Cogstone paleontological and archaeological. I don't know. You'll tell me exactly what they are. So welcome, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you so much, Mike and Tampa Bay Fossil Club, for having me. It is truly an honor to be here. I am the Paleontological Field Director for Cogstone Resource Management, which is a firm here in California that does paleontology, archaeology, cultural and historical resource mitigation. California has laws that protect okay. I no longer but do submit any questions. Say you have a friend here.
Actually, can you hold on for just a second? I think we're having some audio issues. It was breaking up a little bit, I think.
Okay.
But now all of a sudden it's okay, which is weird. All right, well, go ahead and resume. And if it starts breaking up again, I'll let you know.
I hate to do it. You might have to start over because it broke the second you started talking with your slide. It broke up on you. So let's try that again.
Let's go again. So I'm not sure what you lost, but I am Dr. Ashley Ledger. I'm a paleontological field director for Cogstone Resource Management. We're there to make sure that these resources aren't lost during construction projects. We monitor everything from fossils to artifacts. Anyway, I got to know Mike, your fearless leader. I'm so lucky to be in LA where this is all happening real time and these fossils will end up in. I do always remember Mike coming in with a box of t-shirts and a big smile, and he would ask for Dr. Larry. So I would call Larry and say, "Hey Doc, you've got a friend here." And he'd say, "Who is it?" And I'd say, "I won't tell you unless you promise me a t-shirt." I also wanted to be the Red Power Ranger or a veterinarian, so they patted me nicely on the head and said, "Sure, of course." And then years later, when I came in geology, and it was in 2010 when I got my first internship at the Mammoth Site. And this is me with Dr. Larry Agenbroad, my very first fossil find. I found the mammoth vertebrate in the bone bed. It was an experience I'll never forget and set the course of my entire career trajectory from that moment on. I went back as many years as an intern as an intern anymore. We want to hire you. And so I did work year round, but I was in graduate school. So I basically only worked on the weekends. My fix of mammoths, and Dr. Larry helped me come up with a great idea for what was going to be my master's thesis and turned into my PhD dissertation. Because I measured mammoths all across the United States. I've been in a ladder and suspended, and it has been quite the journey. These are mammoths from Massachusetts and New York, South Dakota, Kansas. I had a lift in Pennsylvania. I had to work in the dark in Ohio, and one of the biggest skulls I ever saw was in all the research to dissertation when I called management, and she said, "I have a job for you in Los Angeles." And I was floored. I always imagined I'd stay in South Dakota, but the opportunity in Los Angeles was so great. Sherry explained to me what it was, and I was blown away. And she explained to me the project she wanted me to supervise, which was the Purple Line subway expansion from Metro. The subway expansion is going to add 7 new stations. And new stations, they dig holes under one street in Los Angeles, and these holes are about 1,000 feet long, 80 feet deep, and 100 feet wide. That is where the actual stations will go, where people can get on and off the subway. Then you'll see here that there's many miles between the stations, and that is dug out using a tunnel boring machine, or a TBM. This is me. I'm about 5'10" to the face of the tunnel boring machine. This is what I chews through and creates the tunnel. Think of it like a giant inchworm. The tunnel boring machine is about 500 feet long, grinds it into pieces, and shoots it out the back where it can be lifted to the surface. Now, of course, once the tunnel boring machine takes over, any fossils it would encounter would be obliterated. And so it is when the tunnel boring machines take over, we do not monitor. Luckily, we know at what depth they start, and we have found no fossils at that depth. And so we're not worried about it chewing through fossils, but we get to monitor all of the open excavation. The way the laws in California work are that if you are doing excavation in native sediment that is potentially fossiliferous, you have to have a there watching to make sure that as soon as fossils or artifacts are uncovered, they can be retrieved. So at any given day, and working 24 hours a day, 4 days a week, and then just day shift for the rest of the days, I have paleontologists underground. Currently, I'm supervising paleontological monitors, and we have found over 2,000 fossils on this project alone. Now, we're only right now mainly working on one, the first 3 stations, the La Brea station, the Fairfax station, and the La Cienega station. The Fairfax station, there near that yellow star, That star is actually the world famous La Brea tar pits, which is the world's largest collection of Ice Age fossils, which is why this project is so significant. We knew that getting close to the La Brea tar pits had the potential for so many fossils. Unfortunately, Mother Nature has a sense of humor, and the station closest to the tar pits is the station we have found the least fossils at. No idea why. There is still a chance. There is still work to be done at the Fairfax station, but most of our fossils have actually come from the La Cienega station, Beverly Hills, where it has literally become a treasure trove for us. Now, this is the La Brea Tar Pits Museum. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. And their fossils are found in asphalt, as the name tar pits suggest. What was happening was, as this depiction is, animals like a mammoth would get stuck in the tar, drop it for help, and that would summon every predator in the area to come for a free lunch, as well as summon all of their friends to try to help them out of the tar. What ended up happening was a jumble of fossils. And you can see by this bone bed here that it is bone on top of bone on top of bone on top of bone. And they're all cemented together by that asphalt. Any fossils in the asphalt at all. We only have a handful of fossils from the Fairfax station, but we have encountered plenty of asphalt. Most of our fossils are coming out of the clean, dry sediments. It makes them a little easier to clean for sure, but we're very surprised that we're not finding asphalt deposits. Now, if you look at this image, this is kind of what my staff does. My monitor, Janelle, is the one to the left with the braid down her back. And anytime there is live excavation, we are there watching. They are trained to look for that color and texture difference that they'll notice when fossils are uncovered. At that point, they have a roll of brightly colored flagging tape that they can either throw into the pit to get the attention of the operator and the spotter. And the team is great with working with us. If they notice something, or if they know that we're flagging them down, they'll immediately give us the hands-off symbol, which shows I'm not going to move this equipment. It's safe to come down and look. And sometimes it's a rock, and many times it's a fossil. Now, some of the work happens at the surface, but of course, once they get it down, to see, but that's what we have lights for. The equipment is lit. Our team all has a flashlight and a headlamp. Our monitor, Bethany, is there to the left side. You'll also notice that orange satchel she's holding. That is a self-contained self-rescuer. Because we are everyone everything is very well ventilated and it seems completely safe for us underground. But if you can imagine, tens of feet above her head is a bridge. It's known as the decking, which replaces the road as they dug underneath it. Traffic continues to run above our head while we are in the subway tunnels. Sometimes there's a lot of equipment in a very small area, and so it's unsafe for us to be really close. So our staff also will monitor via binoculars. It is amazing how easy it is to see a fossil, even at distance when using binoculars. There's this color and texture change that happens, and it's almost like a flash of white. Most of our bones have not permineralized. They have not turned to stone. So it's still the original bone material. And so it's got that classic whitish pink color to it. So we notice it fairly regularly. And of course, they're more than willing to help us. They get to go home at the end of the day, and when their family says, "Hey, Mom or Dad, how was your day at work?" they get to say, "I'll excavate fossils today." And it's an amazing experience for everyone involved. We also had hard hat stickers made to give all the us with the excavation. Big things need crew's help. A couple of us on our own sometimes are not able to move those large plaster jackets. The work goes on every day. Nobody really likes construction, so what you hear about is the noise, the dust, and the delays until we find fossils. It changes the public's perception of the digs so much, which leads us to November of 2016 when we made our first. Now, this is me working on consolidating part of a tusk we had found. We were able later to determine that that tusk belonged to a mammoth. It led us to this. This is Hayden. Hayden was the first major fossil find we had and is the skull of a juvenile Columbian mammoth. Now you'll notice the top upper portion of the skull was damaged. That is to be expected. That happens a lot. Our monitor immediately noticed the flash of bone. It instructed the workers to stop. I found something and it's big. At that point, all we could see was the cheek of that mammoth. He said, but they're closing up for the night, so I had to get it in the morning. And so at 6 o'clock in the morning, we went underground and I took one look at it and said, well, this is a mammoth skull. My dad looked at me and said, how did you know that? And I said, well, because I've been studying mammoths for the last 10 years and I have measured every skull that I could find in the and you know these bone features. Dig right there and see if you can find me a tusk. And sure enough, when my monitor dug exactly where I found the tusk, as we kept exposing the specimen, we realized that it not only had one tusk, but it had both tusks still in place. Mammoths, it's interesting to think about their tusks as teeth. Their tusks are actually their incisors. They're their very front two teeth. So just like your teeth and my teeth, they have a pulp cavity. So there is a hollow portion at the base, which is why often in paleontology, tusks are away from the skulls. There's that big open hollow spot, and once the pulp is gone, there's nothing to hold it steady. Plus, ivory is ivory grows in concentric rings. Imagine a stack of those conical Culligan water tank cups. That is how the basal portion is always hollow. Not only is it amazing to find a mammoth skull, but it's amazing to find a mammoth skull that still has both. Consolidating a piece of tusk. We found 3 tusks here at this site. We found a tusk of an adult, about a 3-foot section, and by the stretcher line, yes.
It's still sometimes cutting in and out. It was getting a little bit better for a little while, but I think it might be worth trying dialing in from your phone if you're willing to give that a shot.
Of course. Let me have to stop this screen share so that I can find the phone number. Give me just a second.
Yep, and sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. It's the nature of streaming from across the country.
Live from Hollywood, California.
You lose some.
Right. You can't have it go smoothly on the first try. I mean, there has to be something.
Are we back and good? Can you see my screen and all that jazz?
Yep, it's looking good.
Awesome. So back to Hayden, our juvenile mammoth skull, who in fact is a Columbian mammoth. We were able to determine that by the Schrager lines on the tusk, and then once it was prepped out by its teeth, when we could see that in the lab. The other 3-foot section of adult tusk that we found also ended up being a Columbian mammoth. And in the nearby area, we found a broken mastodon tooth. We have no idea what happened right here at this spot, but we found the remains of at least 3 proboscideans over the course of a day. Now, we never found any more of these individual skeletons. I wish we would have, but it took us all day to excavate Hayden. We built a pedestal around it as you would in any classic paleo setting, but because of the fine sands and pebble gravels we were working in, we made our pedestal very, very tall, because at the base of this pedestal, we finally hit a very solidified clay layer, and we knew that would make an excellent cap to our plaster jacket because it was so crumbly and we did not want any of the material to fall away. After we had everything pedestaled, like classic paleontology, we tunneled underneath it. 2 of us from opposite sides with a very long screwdriver trying to reach into the middle so that we could make these small pillars that once we had it plaster jacketed, we'd be able to knock out those pillars, roll the entire setting of plaster jacket over, and finish making our jacket. Now you'll notice there is some pieces of wood in the background. We used wood and rebar to support the jacket because as it was moved, we did not want it to bend and flex and risk breaking those tusks. Because remember, at this point, we're 25 feet underground. And so when this was finally done with its plaster jacket, which everyone loves making plaster in paleontology, it's messy and it's fun. And I have to give a shout out to the gentleman in the middle. That is Frank. Frank is the one who found Hayden. Once we had it all plaster jacketed, we let it dry overnight. It actually took 2 days to dry because it is underground in a humid environment. So it dried very slowly. But once it was done, we were able to actually use the help of the crew. They brought in a bulldozer and helped us to flip this over. They also then used that bulldozer to drive our mammoth skull to the opening and then hooked it to a crane. They hooked the mammoth skull to a crane, flew it about 80 feet up in the air, and loaded it onto a pickup truck where it could then be delivered to our lab. I have never seen a mammoth fly before, and I can tell you it is one of the scariest experiences of my life. Now, big shout out to Skanska Trailer Shea, the company that's doing the excavation work and did all the crane hookup. They did a phenomenal job, and our tusks did not break. The only break in the tusk was the very tip, which was broken when we found it. And so we were so pleased with the work they were able to help us do. And then the La Brea tar pits actually allowed us to work in their fishbowl fossil laboratory. We did most of our preparation right there at the La Brea tar pits, which was a great educational experience for them and for us. Most of the fossils they work with are coated in asphalt, and Hayden was completely clean, completely dry, no need to soak out any of that remnant tar. And it was great for their museum visitors. They got to come in and see fossils coated in asphalt and fossils that were not, working next to each other side by side. Of course, we weren't able to work at the nice little desks. We had to work on the floor because this jacket is very, very heavy and it didn't quite fit on the normal tables. We also then screen picked all the sediment and found remains of many small critters like gophers and rabbits in amongst the sediment around Hayden's skull. And here is Hayden once the jacket has been trimmed down. You can see that part of the left tusk was broken and it is detached. It's sitting up there by its upper teeth. For those of you who don't know, the mammoth teeth are those two objects that look like the bottoms of your tennis shoes. Those fine ridges are what they use to grind up all the grass and shrubbery they eat, because remember, these animals are big. They're eating between 500 and 700 pounds of vegetation every day. Now, Hayden wasn't eating quite that much because it was still a juvenile. But what you're looking at here, between what looks like the front of the shoe and the heel, is actually two separate teeth. Mammoth teeth are unique in how they move into their mouths. It's the same with mastodons and elephants and the other proboscideans. Their teeth slide forward from the back, like a conveyor belt. They don't work like our teeth and grow up from the bottom. They move forward and push the old tooth out ahead of it. So because we can see the progression of these teeth, we were able to tell that Hayden was between 6 and 10 years old at the time he died. We did not find any evidence of predation on his skull, but again, we never found the rest of the skeleton. So we're not sure if Hayden died of natural causes or if he was hunted, got a disease. And I say hunted, and I mean typically by animals. We were deep enough that there wouldn't have been humans in this area of Southern California at that time. This guy would have been hunted by saber-toothed cats, giant short-faced bears, dire wolves, things along that caliber. But Hayden drew the attention of everyone. It opened up the eyes to what the construction was doing and the means that Los Angeles and Metro was taking to protect the fossils in the ground. And that led to a media storm, everything from CBS This Morning, as Mike mentioned, to USA Today, the New York Times. We were interviewed by magazines overseas. My alma mater did an alumni feature on me. I've given presentations to the mayor of Los Angeles. Eric Garcetti is wonderful. And in that picture, I'm holding an actual giant ground sloth jaw in my left arm and a mammoth toe bone in my right hand. These were all actual fossils that we take to these events for not only kids, but adults as well, to get to come and see and touch real fossils. There's just something magical about getting to touch an actual specimen than touching a cast. And because these bones are in such beautiful condition, we're confident in bringing the actual specimens with us. Hayden became so popular in LA, he actually became the face of Cogstone's Christmas card. This was an artist rendering we had done that shows the outline of the intersection at the time we found Hayden. Hayden was actually found about 24 feet below this intersection of La Brea and Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. It's about 1.5 miles from the La Brea tar pits. Hayden garnered all sorts of attention, but the fossil finds didn't start there. That was just what got the ball rolling. We found many other remains. This is a limb bone from yet another mammoth. One end was damaged, but we were able to recover the rest, and it is in beautiful condition. We also found remains from the camelops, an ancient ancestor to modern camels, which was really eye-opening, especially here in California. No one thinks of camels as being native to North America, and they are. This is an ulna that we were actually able to repair in the lab. We also found giant ground sloths. And when I say giant, I mean enormous. Think of the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. These animals were absolutely huge, huge, lumbering, leaf-eating sloths. And sloths are actually very predominant in the fossils we're finding. We actually have found the remains of 8 different sloths from 2 different species. We found a skull and lower jaw. The skull is there in the back, and the skull was in pretty rough condition, and the lower jaw is there in the foreground. It's also the one I was holding at that talk to give you an idea of just how solid this is. Unfortunately, it is missing its teeth. Their teeth fit very loosely in their sockets and often get separated after the animal dies. But we still have a great portion of the giant ground sloth. As well as a fossil we have nicknamed Shakira. This is an entire pelvis from a giant ground sloth. We know it's a female by the curvature of the pelvic opening. And just imagine, you can see that scale bar. That scale bar represents 10 centimeters. This is humongous, and its name is Shakira because her hips don't lie. And bison. Bison are by far the most abundant animal we are finding on the project. We find vertebrae by the dozens, ribs by the dozens, and skulls, and more than one. This is one of the skulls. You can see just how immaculate this is. It has its full gambit of teeth and is in beautiful condition. Here's yet another skull, one that needs more preparation. And I want to draw special attention to its horns. If you'll notice its horns there, it's classic to what you would think of as a bison. Now, these ancient bison are very similar to modern bison. They're just slightly larger. But there's another ancient bison known as bison latifrons, the longhorned bison. Bison latifron has been known to have a horn spread of up to 9 feet. These animals are humongous. And this is Andy. This is one of our fossils we have found, and it is the horn core from bison latifrons. This was the first image that came of this one that was released in our press release, but we also found a whole pile of fragments when we found Andy. Those fragments have been almost completely assembled, and we will be able to fill in most of that gap. But we're looking at over 20 inches of horn core alone. And remember, they had a bone horn core that was then covered by essentially a keratin sheath. So the actual horn that would have been on the live animal would have been even longer than this. Now, Andy is also special because Andy is also relatively young. Once we were finished cleaning and repairing this, we noticed the sutures at the horn core are still fusing. This was a young individual and is this large. Andy is also unique to us because there's actually 2 different forms of bison latifrons that we know of. One with very curved horns and one with very straight horns. Andy is the first straight-horned bison latifron specimen from the state of California. We're completely honored to have found this specimen. Now, we wish we would have found more of Andy, but if you're going to find one part of a bison, I think a 20 to 30 inch horn is probably the piece to find. We've been incredibly lucky. We also have found the remains of dozens of other species. These are just a few of them. We have deer, lots of horse bones, rabbit bones, turtle bones, sea otter bones, which are very, very rare in California. Mastodon, mammoth, gopher. We find dozens and dozens and dozens of snails. We've also found evidence of charcoal, natural charcoal, not man-made, which shows us evidence of prehistoric forest fires, as well as mudslides that we can then see with the geology surrounding them. We are really getting a glimpse in the past and getting to learn so much about the fossil record of Los Angeles. And then the question we always get, what about the carnivores? What about the dire wolves shown there at the top and the saber-toothed cats shown at the bottom? Yes, we have found those too, but they are not near as abundant as the rest of the fossils we're finding. Now think about that for a minute. We only have one ulna, which is a forearm bone from a dire wolf, and we have two vertebrae or pieces of the backbone from a saber-toothed cat or smilodon. Why aren't we finding as many predator bones? Well, it's because for every predator, it has to have lots of prey to eat. So if there were as many dire wolves as we're finding bison remains, the dire wolves would starve to death. So we find lots of bison and lots of horses and lots of ground sloths and lots of mammoths. So only a few of the carnivore type animals that would have been eating these things. So we are getting a very classic look at what the landscape looked like in LA, which is exciting because most people from this part of Los Angeles are well versed with the La Brea tar pits. They've all gone there on school field trips. They go there with their children on weekends. It's a brilliantly done museum and showcases just how abundant life was in Southern California. For example, this is a wall in the tar pits. This is known as the dire wolf wall. On this wall are 404 dire wolf crania. Take a minute to let that soak in. This is 404 dire wolf skulls that they have found at the tar pits, and they actually have many, many more. They have thousands of dire wolf skulls and thousands of saber-toothed cat skulls. And then on the purple line, we only have one limb bone from a dire wolf and two vertebrae from a saber-toothed cat. It's because of how the animals died. At the La Brea tar pits, where animals were getting trapped in tar and summoning every predator in the area to come for what they thought was an easy meal, they all jump in, they get stuck, and their remains are then trapped forever too. So at the tar pits, we get a very atypical view into the past. It is not at all what the population would have looked like. For every mammoth, there were probably not 400 wolves. But we get that glimpse in the rest of the area surrounding the tar pits to show, look, it was really the prey type animals that were so abundant, and the carnivores were few and far between. It's an incredible look at paleontology, and all of these fossils have been found within 2.5 miles of each other, from one end of section 1 to the other end of section 1, those first 3 stations. We have found fossils at all 3 stations currently, most of them from the La Cienega station in Beverly Hills. Now, Cogstone, my company, has been contracted to lead the paleontology and archaeology of segment 2, which encompasses the next 2 sections, one at Rodeo Drive and one in Constellation City. We have already started monitoring. That project is just in its baby phases, and we have already found fossils there too. So we anticipate that this project will be ongoing and just as abundant as we continue down the line. The contract for Section 3 has not been awarded yet, but we will keep our fingers crossed that Cogstone gets to do that section as well. It has been great to work with Metro and TPOG and STS, the companies that are doing the actual excavation work. They've been great to our staff. They've been great helping us out. And all of these fossils will end up at the Natural History Museum. The fossils are currently being held by Cogstone until the end of the project because the museum would rather get a semi or 2 full of fossils at once than a slow trickle and have to curate them one at a time. This way, they'll all get curated together and their field numbers will be associated with their localities, and that will be great for any visiting researchers. The La Brea Tar Pits is also part of the LA County Natural History Museum family. They're both under the same umbrella, but because they have such different focuses, they house different things. So any of the fossils found in asphalt will go to the La Brea Tar Pits. Currently, it's not very many, but keep your fingers crossed. We still have more excavation to do at Fairfax. And then all of the fossils that were found in clean, dry sediments will go to the LA County Museum. We are hoping that some of them will end up on display, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't. Between the 3 beautiful bison skulls we have, plus Hayden, plus the ground sloth skull, and the myriad of other bones, it would be an amazing display to a local area. You know, it's one thing to go to a museum with your families and to see a dinosaur found in Mongolia or to see a fossil found in Ohio. But it's a different thing to take your children to a museum and say, look, buddy, look, sweetie, this was found literally in our backyard. We can drive to the intersection where this was found, and you can know that 20 to 80 feet below your feet, we found hundreds and hundreds of fossils. So we're hoping that this ends up as a museum display. And when it does, I say when because I'm very optimistic, please come out to Los Angeles and come visit. And of course, talk to Mike or myself. And I would love to get to take you on a tour of the fossils we're actually finding here because I love them. They are my babies. I'm partial to several of them, as you can well imagine, but we're incredibly proud of the work we're doing. And we're so glad for the laws that California has that protects all of these amazing resources that will end up in the museums. I thank you very much for your time, and I hope you could hear most of this talk since we had a few computer issues. And now I'm going to jump off and stop sharing my screen, and we're going to get to questions. I hope you've submitted questions during the talk. If you're thinking of any now, please do put those in the chat because I would love to help answer questions. I know we have viewers of all ages joining us today, and so there is no question that is a bad question. Please feel free to send those in. Mike, Eileen, have you guys noticed any questions coming in?
I'm reading right through. A lot of people ask questions that you answered, and you've already answered some of them. But let me look.
Oh, well, good. I'm so glad.
So
oh no, here's all the
question
comments where it
from
broke up. I'm so
Elaine.
sorry.
One question was, what's the measurement of the teeth? And I think that was when you were talking about Hayden.
Hayden, the measurements on Hayden. So Hayden is about 5 feet long from the tip of the tusk to the back of its head. It's almost 3 feet wide if you look at the spread between its two tusks. So it is still very large, and that jacket weighed several hundred pounds. But remember, this was a juvenile, so it was actually quite small in the realm of mammoth. I actually don't recall off the top of my head the measurements on the tusks themselves, but they are shorter than Andy's horn core.
So Ashley, a few people are asking how do they remove the asphalt from the bones, from the fossils?
How does the tar pits remove the asphalt from the bones? Well, I asked the curator that exact same question once, and I was told, we don't. We just beat it into submission. They actually have some solvents they use that they can apply to the bones, and small bones they can actually soak in the solvent. It is amazing to watch. If they have a small limb bone from a bird or a dire wolf or a saber cat that is completely black with asphalt, they can actually put that in the jar with the solvent, and the solvent turns black almost immediately. It draws a lot of the asphalt out of the bones themselves, but they never quite get all of it. If you tour their collections, you will see that some bones are still leaking tar, and it is a liquid, even though it is very, very thick. Think of nearly frozen molasses. It will eventually flow out of the bones and onto little puddles all over their collections facility. They tend to put wax paper under where they can sense drips are coming to catch those so they can clean up the floor. It's an amazing process they have at the tar pits.
Elaine Heath would like to know the temperature you were working at underneath the streets.
The temperature. Well, because we're not in a cave, it's similar to what the temperature is outside, but they have giant ventilation fans because we have so many people working underground and it is potentially gassy. If you visit the La Brea tar pits, you'll notice the lake pit outside. There's actually big methane bubbles bubbling up from the surface. And so we risk running into methane pockets and hydrogen sulfide pockets. So there is a lot of ventilation. They are big round fans that are nearly as tall as I am, and they move an amazing amount of wind. They will even blow small pebbles and rocks at you. So you have to be very careful when you're excavating to not fling sand and pebbles up in the air because they will just blow them down the tunnel. And it does not feel very good when you get pelted by a whole bunch of little rocks. And so we are very careful when we excavate, but it does get a little chilly down there because of the breeze. So we do have jackets that we take underground, but once you start excavating, it gets quite warm. Now, remember, I know I'm a Nebraska girl, so I should have Nebraska blood. Californians are not happy unless the temperature is between 70 and 75 degrees. Anything below 70 and we are freezing, anything above 75 and we are too hot. So underground, even if it drops a few degrees below 70, it feels cold to us because we have acclimated to the beautiful climate here. Good questions.
Jeannie T.
All right, I'm trying.
Jeannie T would like to know what surprised you the most about the purple line digs.
Well, what surprised me was, well, all of it. Getting to come to Los Angeles where they were going to dig giant holes in the ground and allow us to be there while they did it to pull out the fossils was amazing in itself. And then I expected we would not find many fossils until we got to the Fairfax station, and I anticipated we would find one of those classic La Brea type deposits. So I was very surprised when I got the phone call about the large fossil from the La Brea station, which there is no asphalt in. I was surprised that it was a mammoth skull of all things. And then I was surprised that Fairfax yielded so little fossils. And then Beverly Hills. I never expected we would find that many fossils there. They have been great. They love the fossils. They actually want to work with the museum to get some of the fossils on display in the Beverly Hills Town Hall, so that the residents of Beverly Hills will see them when they go to city meetings, which I think is a great idea. So it's been one surprise after another. And I think the biggest surprise was the fact that our first fossil finds, one, were mammoths, which was what I had always wanted to spend my career working on, and was a bit hesitant, to be honest, when I left South Dakota, because in South Dakota, I knew I would spend my life working on mammoths. But to get to come to LA and then our first big fossil find to actually be mammoth remains, I can't even describe that feeling to you. It was like Larry Agenbroad, who, rest his soul, had a hand on my shoulder and was like, here you go. You take that non-personality he always told me I had and do your thing with mammoths here. And it's been incredible. And it's fun because I'm known as the Mammoth Lady. After Hayden was all over the news, I was recognized out and about. And yes, this is the entertainment capital of the world for music and movies. And when you think of LA, you think of palm trees and Disneyland and celebrities. And to a very small population, I've become one of those celebrities. I went to donate blood at the Children's Hospital, and I walked in and they said, hey, you're the Mammoth Lady. And I said, how do you know that? And they said, we work with children. They are obsessed with the fossils you guys are finding. And so it's been absolutely unreal. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And I've learned a lot myself. I spent my entire academic career studying mammoths, and now I have learned lots about all of the Pleistocene animals. And I have a huge interest in bison and horses and ground sloths and all of these other amazing creatures that we're finding just right under the streets of LA.
So Dig Dive Discover asks, he wants to know about your microfossils. Are you screening for the microfossils as well?
Yes, we are absolutely screening for microfossils. So every fossil that we find, we keep all the sediment that is associated with it, and we look through all of that. Because when a fossil is found, we know that that area was prime for fossil preservation. So then that is all picked for microfauna. And we have a couple lab technicians who are wonderful at microfossil work. They can sit at a microscope for hours and find dozens and dozens and hundreds of small pieces. Rodent teeth, rodent bones, snail shells, little tiny clam shells, anything like that, you name it, they're finding it. And we also take sediment samples periodically as we get deeper, because we know what to look for geologically for what could potentially yield fossils. We do take sediment samples, about a half of a 5-gallon bucket, because it takes many hours to go through that much sediment, but we periodically sample for microbes as well. Great questions, everybody.
So the Purple No is asking, is Andy male or female, and did the straight horn signify having anything to do with gender?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I do not know if Andy is a male or a female. Now, there is one member of my company who is more of a bison specialist than I am. So maybe in time, once Andy's horn is reconstructed, we'll be able to get more information about that. But the curvature doesn't have anything necessarily to do with sex as far as we know. Think of it like this. You're looking at me and you can see Mike and you can see Eileen, and we all likely are a different height. We all have a different body build. We probably have different hair colors. Those are all things with your genetics. It's probably the same with those horns. Some are probably bred to have curly horns and some are bred to have straight horns. Like I have very curly hair and I'm sure some of you have very straight hair. So it doesn't necessarily tell us about gender. It just tells us about that individual animal. But we went with a name that could be unisex, and it could apply to a female or a male, which we often do that with our fossil specimens when we don't know. We're honestly not sure if Hayden is a male or a female, and so went with an androgynous name as well, one that could go either way. The names are very fun. I'd like to talk about those just a little bit. It's actually a tradition that Larry Agenbroad started, that whoever found the skull got to name it. It was kind of an honor. Now, because we're finding such amazing specimens that aren't just skulls, we've started naming other things like the pelvis named Shakira. And so Frank, the gentleman who found Hayden, was the one who came up with the name. I sent him a message saying, I need you to come up with a name that could be male or female. And he said, how about Hayden? And it stuck and was perfect. And then Bethany was our monitor who found the bison horn core that is Andy. And she looked at me and said, I don't want to name this one. You name it. And I actually named it after a very dear friend of mine who had passed away tragically a month before we found Andy. And my friend Andrea, who went by Andy, was a huge supporter of the Purple Line paleontology. She read every news article, and every time she heard I was going underground, she immediately texted me and said, tell me what you find. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I have to keep it all under wraps until it's public knowledge and there's a press release. And sure enough, she was always the first one to read our press releases. And so it was a great honor for me to get to name a specimen after her. And ironically, Andrea went to Hot Springs High School in South Dakota, and their mascot is the bison. So I hope Andrea was watching and got to enjoy that dig.
So despite all of our nice vertebrate fossils in Florida, we have a lot of invert fans. And John Jacobs is asking, has anything been published on the snails found yet?
Nothing has been published on the snails yet. If you're interested, please get my contact information and let's work on something, because I would love to learn more about snails. We are collecting the snails in micro. We also have tons of clam shells, because remember, as we dig deeper, we go farther back in time. And so when we first start digging, we are in the quaternary terrestrial sediments. We're basically in the Ice Age. But when we get to 80 or more, 80 or more feet deep, we're actually in marine sediments. We're in pure beach sands and we found remains of a whale. And we find tons and tons and tons of giant clamshells. Now, the clamshells are actually not protected by the vertebrate laws that govern California to protect the vertebrate fossils. So we are not collecting any more shells. Now, I say any more because we've already collected over 5,000 of them. We have the big gooey ducks and a lot of big ones that are literally the size of my hand. They are humongous, and we've collected thousands, and the museums have said we have enough clamshells unless they're stunning, because a lot of them are broken. We don't need to collect any more of those.
Nancy Cadeau is asking if you could explain the tusks teeth reference again, with the tusk being part of their lower teeth.
Yes. So their tusks are actually their upper teeth. So as humans, we can all look in our mouth or run your tongue over your teeth. In the back, you have molars, and then premolars. Then the pointy one is a canine, and then you have incisors. Mammoths basically only have molars and incisors. Their baby teeth can be considered premolars, but it depends on whose paper you read. But they will go through 6 sets of those molars in their lifetime, each one longer and wider than the one before it. And then they have their 2 incisors, which are their tusks that grow long and recurved. And their tusks will grow throughout their entire lives. Now, interestingly enough, mammoths and mastodons were either right tusked or left tusked. I am right-handed. If you hand me a fork to eat dinner, I will eat with my right hand. I write with my right hand, all of those things. We can tell by the wear patterns on the tusks if the animal tended to use its right tusk or its left tusk first. You can often tell which side is dominant by which foot you use to go up a staircase. And so mammoths and mastodons would be using their tusks for battle and to clear areas to get to more food. Now, remember, we're talking about Columbian mammoths. I know when everybody thinks mammoth, they think the cute woolies. It was much too warm in Southern California for woolly mammoths. These are the Columbian mammoths, which are much bigger than woolly mammoths. Woolly mammoths live in a climate where it's cold and their food is covered in snow. In Southern California, it is nice and green and lush all year long, and it is quite easy to find abundant vegetation. So they're not using their tusks as shovels, but if there's a patch of grass they want to get to, they will tend to either start moving a tree away with their right or their left tusk, and we can see that in the wear patterns.
Okay, so Elaine Heath is asking, when there are many mammoths in one area, can you get permission to dig that local area to potentially get more mammoths? I assume she means you, not us.
I would love to take all of you underground with me, but there's lots of safety training that goes into it. So for me and my team, anytime we find a fossil, we do dig extensively in the area around it, below it, to the sides, to try to see if there is anything else directly in that area. Once we have done as much as we can by hand, because it is backbreaking work, it is very difficult, we then actually have the big gray dolls, which are the machines you see on the side of the road with the big claw on the front, the big bucket scoops. We'll actually have them come, and for the first few feet, they scrape very gingerly, only inches at a time, so that we can look for more fossils directly in the area. Because of course, they want to help too. They're just as excited about the fossils as we are. And actually, there's special provisions that were set in place at the Fairfax station because the potential for fossils was so great. Once they hit what's known as the paleo zone, which is the asphaltic layer where the tar pits are finding so many fossils, they dig in 6-inch lifts. They only scrape off about 6 inches of sediment at a time, so that if we do hit one of those giant asphaltic masses of bone, we don't destroy the whole thing. Because with each scoop, they have the potential to move several cubic yards of several cubic yards of sediment, and we don't want to risk damaging bones. Now, we wish we would have put all those measures in place at the La Cienega station, because that is where we found most of the fossils, but they have worked with us very well. And we also get to look through the spoil pile, which, as you can imagine, sometimes when they take a big scoop of dirt, they pick up an individual fossil with that, whether it's an ankle bone from a horse or a vertebra from a bison, and it gets dumped out in what's called the spoils pile or the muck pile. We also have someone watching the spoils, so that when that bucket is dumped, we can watch that sediment rain down and see if it looked like a bone fell out of it. And many of our fossils have come from the spoils pile as well.
Dig Dive Discovers asking, in general, any advice as a professional for amateur collectors to contribute in ongoing fossil research? And if I could, real quick, if Dig Dive Discovers not in Florida, for those people who may be new, who are from Florida, we do have a permit, a Florida permit system that's run out of the University of Florida in Gainesville. And of course, you would always want to report any remarkable finds to the University of Florida, and you can always contact us here at the club to put you in contact with the right people, whether it be vertebrate, invertebrate, commercial, in the river, or whatever. So go ahead, Ashley, Dr. Ashley.
Mike, that's a great answer, and I think that applies to everywhere. When you find fossils, it is best to know the laws in your area. Can you collect it? Can you not? Who does it get reported to? But universities and museums are always a great line of defense to report fossil discoveries too. But before you ever move a fossil, if you find one, take as many pictures as you can think you need, and then take 10 more. Get pictures of the area surrounding it, the rocks surrounding it, so we can potentially figure out what age it's from. And then if you can, even a lot of phones, you can turn on the georeferencing with your camera images and make sure you have a GPS marker from where that specimen came from. Because if and when the museum curates that or wants it or comes out to dig for it, the more information we can have with fossils, the more information you can get from it. The elevation, the depth, its spatial information, that all gives you clues to where that animal lived and how that animal died. And so, by all means, keep your eyes open for fossils, but always be ready to think like a scientist. And the more data you can collect, the better. Before you ever move it, take notes, take pictures, and enjoy the fact that you're probably the first person to have seen that fossil in tens of thousands or maybe even millions of years.
Gledhill from Tampa
Great question.
is asking, Are you, Dr. Ashley, are you familiar with the Ice Age animals discovered here in Hillsborough County known as the Lacey Shell Pit Dig? Discovered in 19...
I am not.
Well, I will send you those volumes.
Please do. I am always willing to learn about something else. I have to admit, I'm kind of a baby paleontologist. I spent almost 10 years between summers and weekends working at the Mammoth Site, especially in the summers. And I spent the entire time I was in graduate school focusing on mammoths. So I am still learning about everything else. But think of it like when you go to the doctor. If you go to the ER, you encounter a general doctor who knows a little bit of everything. But if you have a heart attack, you see a cardiologist. And if something goes on with your brain, you see a neurologist. Just like medical doctors have a specialty, my specialty is Pleistocene proboscideans. And so I am more than willing to learn about other things. And this project has really allowed me to learn a lot about everything from the Ice Age. And someday, when they invent time machines, that's when I want to go back to. I want to go back to the Pleistocene and see how these animals lived and interact.
Okay. I think I got paleoanalysis from Texas is asking, are these the same kind of mammoth that are found in Florida?
Yes. So Florida does have Columbian mammoths, but Florida also has a lot of Mammuthus meridionalis, which is a different species. But the Columbian mammoth is very well distributed across the southern half of the United States. They are also found up as far as, South Dakota and North Dakota. But the farther north you get, remember, the colder it gets. And so the more likely you are to find woolly mammoths. But here in the southern part of the U.S., we find Mammuthus meridionalis and Mammuthus columbi. Now, California has a neat little extra mammoth. We have Mammuthus exilus, which is the pygmy mammoth. Imagine a full-grown adult Columbian mammoth and shrink it to about 6 feet tall at its shoulder. The Channel Islands near Santa Barbara, California, just a handful of miles. In California, still could be a couple hours away north of us. They're finding pygmy mammoths on this island, and they're almost genetically identical, or morphologically and genetically identical to Columbian mammoths. They actually evolved from Columbian mammoths that migrated from the mainland to the island. But it's an island full of little tiny mini mammoths, and they are the cutest thing in the world. Too bad they're extinct. I would love to have one as a pet. But remember, a 6 foot tall mammoth is still a very big animal. But compared to their cousins, the Columbians on the mainland, they would stand about 15 feet tall at their shoulder. To kind of put it in perspective, and since I know we have some younger viewers, picture Manny from Ice Age, a woolly mammoth. They're very big. They're as big as modern elephants. But Manny, a full-grown adult male, could walk underneath the chin of a full-grown adult male Columbian mammoth and not even bump its head. So there is a big size disparity even between the mammoths.
I'm not seeing any more questions come across at the moment. If I don't see one come across next second, I will tell you that folks are saying, especially Elaine Heath is saying, Mammoth Lady, you did a mammoth job today. And
thank you very, very much.
Thank you for putting up with some of the trouble we had today at the beginning and quickly recovering quick on your phone there. We appreciate everything you've done for us, and you will always be our first virtual meeting. So thank you very much. And
it has been an absolute honor. I have enjoyed it immensely, and I hope we get to do it again.
And Eileen, thank you for your hard work behind the scenes, getting this put together and figuring stuff out. I know you have been working on this even as Dr. Ash has been talking. I know you fixed some things and moved some things. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I will remind everybody that we do take the summer off, although thanks to COVID-19, we've had a little bit longer of a break than we expected, but we do hope, with short of it being a problem in the fall, to open back up with our meetings, our field trips. We'll get Fossil Fest back on the agenda for probably March. I don't think we're going to be able to pull that off in the fall. And really, the biggest reason we can't pull it off is because there's no way we can ask 120 of you to volunteer in the fall and then turn around and do it again in March, because you will remember how hard work it is and you won't want to volunteer again. We need a good year between the shows so you guys forget and think it's fun again. So we appreciate everybody coming tonight, watching us online. We had about 70, 75 people at one point. So thank you all very much. And if we have to do this more, we'll get better at it each month. Look forward to a newsletter in September. And short of that, we're probably done for the summer. So thank you all. And it's a pleasure doing business with you guys. And I'm proud to represent you guys. So thank you very much. I guess that's it. Good night.
And thank
Yep,
you from
thanks,
me too.
everybody.
I'm seeing the wonderful comments come in, and I love you all too. Thank you, family and friends, for joining the Tampa Bay Fossil Club. Really, I hope everyone subscribes to their YouTube channel, because I hope to do this again, and then you'll know when it's coming. And I appreciate everyone who tuned in, and those of you in Florida who actually get to go to these meetings in person, I hope to meet you all one day in the flesh.
Eileen?
Yeah, thanks again, Ashley. And sorry for some of the technical difficulties, everyone, but thanks for sticking around. And, you know, it ended up being successful in the end. And, you know, maybe we'll do one of these again in the future if we have to.
Thank you. Sign us off. Goodbye.
All right, signing off.
Bye, everybody.